If you were thinking I was done with the AT2040, you were wrong. There's more to come. Welcome back to the Rebel Tech channel. I'm Justin, and in this video we're going to be doing a comparison. And this comparison is between the AT2020 and the AT2040. Now, I had this planned for a while, and it's not really a surprise to me at least, but to you guys it may be a surprise because I did the big finale of the budget broadcast microphones, and I didn't know when I was going to put it out, but I knew it was going to be soon because I wanted to hit it while it was still hot right now. People are still interested in getting these microphones, and also I want to try and help you guys figure out which one is better. I did videos in the past comparing other budget microphones, like the ones you saw in that budget broadcast battle. I did comparisons with the AT2020 because maybe the condenser microphone might be the answer for your style, your content, whatever it is. Maybe you like this a little bit better. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the build. So first up, let's talk about the old guy right here, the AT2020. Very popular microphone, and it's been around for a while. And I could say this about all Audio-Technica microphones. They're very well built. They're really just tanks. And they can handle a beating. This AT2020 has been in the studio and in my content for the better part of the last 5 years. So it's still kicking and still looking good. I love the sound of this microphone, but we're not in the sound right now. We're in the build. What I will say is it's kind of beat up right now, but after 5 years, any microphone is going to look beat up regardless of how much it is or what style it is. With the newcomer here, we have a very hefty build, which makes sense for a dynamic microphone, which makes sense for a broadcast microphone. I will say that I will give a upper hand to the AT2040 on its build quality, and I think that's because of the fact that it is a dynamic and a broadcast style microphone. Those usually are more hefty. But no disrespect to the AT2020, it's a very well built microphone. Grill is very sturdy. Both of them have sturdy grills, but I will give an upper hand to the AT2040. Mostly because it's just the way it is. The broadcast and dynamic microphones are usually more rugged and have a better build. Slight edge. Half a point. So the next thing we're going to get into is some techie talk about the construction of them internally, electronically, and everything that goes into it. Here's a graphic on all these specs, and I will talk about the ones that stand out and the ones that I really do feel that you need to know a little bit more about afterwards. So the first thing that stands out, obviously, condenser and dynamic, pretty easy. I will say that it's a matter of preference when you're deciding on that. I'm not going to say one is better than the other in that respect, but I will say it's a matter of preference to the individual or what you're doing with it. Next up, we have the polar pattern. Big difference here. Cardioid on the AT2020 and a hypercardioid on the AT2040. Let's go around and see how they are. First, the AT2020 with the cardioid polar pattern. We're going around to the side around 90 degrees, and we're going to do more off-axis rejection in the room and get more of a room noise with it, but this is just a test. And then we're going to go right around to the back here, roughly around 180, maybe a little less. And this is what it's going to sound like. Moving back 90, and finally back to the front. Next up, we're going to go do the hypercardioid on the AT2040, which is a little more honed in, but does have a tiny bit of pickup on the back. I will say this is probably the best off-axis rejection of a microphone that I've used, at least on the cheaper end. There are some higher end ones that do a really good job as well, and that makes sense because they're more expensive. So moving around to the side, 90 degrees, roughly about like 3-4 inches away. This is what it's going to be like when you go around. Moving back to the sweet spot here, and roughly around 180, where it's probably mostly rejected. I do have a slight fan noise going on as well on my laptop, so keep an eye out for that, or an ear out for that, I should say. We're going to do off-axis rejection in this room and the untreated room. If you've been here before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, two more things I want to point out with their specs. And the first thing is their sensitivity. Now, this makes sense. This is obvious because of the fact that they're dynamic and condenser. The AT2040 has a negative 53 decibel sensitivity, and the 2020 has a negative 37. As far as like comparing that, maybe if you have a better preamp, like I have it going to the Zoom F6 right now, it's not going to matter. But it could matter if you have a lower end preamp, which doesn't offer a lot of decibels. But with the AT2020, it matters a little less. With the AT2040, it matters a little more. But as far as the sensitivity, if everything's equal and you got high-end preamps, it's really not that big of a deal considering the fact that that's how they are. That's how they're built. Just like I said before with the build quality, they are built a certain way for a certain person or a certain thing. The sensitivity is the same concept in favor of the AT2020. Now, something that isn't, well, maybe not isn't, but it probably, like maybe, the frequency response. The AT2040 has a frequency response of 80 hertz to 16 kilohertz, while we have a standard 20 to 20 on the 2020. No pun intended, I promise. That was really, I stumbled upon that one. Wow. I didn't realize it till I said it. That's pretty funny. All right, so I'm not a huge fan of the 2040's frequency response. I thought they cut it way too much. The 16 on top, I could deal with. The 80 on the bottom as a hard cut, not a hard cut, but it's cut in the sense that there's no option to say yes or no. There's no switch, basically, no high-pass filter. So it's the way it is. If you like that tone, perfect. If not, then it could be a little mid-forward, and it's a little narrowed out. With the 2020, it's pretty broad, right in the spectrum of everyone hearing. Pretty easy to talk about. And as far as the specs and tech are concerned, I'm giving a full edge to the 2020. It's not a surprise if you've been here before, but that's just my opinion. And let me know down in the comments what you think about that. Now, speaking of the frequency response, let's get into the frequency response curve and break it down a little bit more. Now, of course, I broke down these microphones a lot in my videos. So we'll just keep this simple, lows, mids, and highs, and not to go too crazy. If you want more of an in-depth analysis of it, you could check out the individual videos, or you could check out some of the other comparisons where I might go a little bit more in depth. But for the most part with my comparisons, I keep it simple and keep it kind of not vague, but I don't want to drone on like crazy and make it too long. So first up with the lows, let's go to the 2040, and it's pretty simple. They cut it at 80, and it's a high-pass filter. It's a low-cut filter, and it's just one of those things that it's too much. It does start to level off and then dip down as it goes into the mids, but it's too much. The AT2020, on the other hand, has a nice, like, rounded edge on that low end as you go lower, way lower. And then right around 50, 40 or 50, it starts to dip down and give you a little valley there to cut out some of the low mids, maybe even some of that section that could be considered annoying, but you could always boost it in EQ. You can fix these things in EQ and post-processing, but naturally it has that dip right around like 80 hertz, which depending on your voice could be an issue, or it could be a good thing depending on your voice. Everybody's different. Then after you get to like 80, 90, it starts to rise back up and starts to flatten out as you move into the mids. And it has a slight rise to it above 0 decibels there. So I noticed that it stays flat pretty much well through the mids and rises ever so slightly. After 1K, it starts to rise a little bit more. 1.5, 2 starts to rise a little bit more, and that gets us into our highs. On the AT2040 side, we have a little bit of a valley there. Not too much. You're probably going to notice a little bit, but it's not too crazy. When you listen to it, it does seem a little bit mid-forward because of the lacking of the low end and maybe even the high end, but That's just how it looks on a chart, and that's how it sounds. I mean, it's hard to talk about this microphone without talking about how I hear it when you look at it on a chart, because it definitely, this chart reflects it. And I know it looks like it's from 20 to 20, but when you hear it, it's not. Then it starts to rise between 5 and 1K and continue to rise to the highs. Now, segueing right into the highs, the AT2040 has a rise to about like 3K, has a nice presence boost there, and then dips back down ever so slightly, nice steady curve down as it normally does in most frequency responses. And I do like the high end on this microphone. It's a little narrow for my liking. Now finally, the AT2020 and its high end. We left off at 2K, so it rises up, peaks and valleys as you go on, but there's not many presence boosts. There's one you see there around like 8, 9K, and then maybe one higher around like 15, but for the most part, it's pretty like neutral. And I like the tone of the 2020. On a chart, I love it. It looks great. And it's tuned a little bit here and there, a little specific in certain areas, but for the most part, I really do like the tone. The low end, I am a big fan of. Midsection, great. And from my tone, you can tell that the 2020 has taken this one as well. So another slight edge to the, actually this one is a big edge to the 2020 because it's just the way it is. The way that this chart is, I do prefer the 2020. So thankfully, we didn't have any steps. Actually, someone's stepping right now. But during that test, no one was stepping around, so that was pretty cool. And now we're going to do an off-axis rejection test. So that means I'm going to back up a bit, do a distance test, and do the 90s, and do 180. And then also the sweet spots as well, because we have a hypercardioid polar pattern here. Alright, so I'm about like 2-3 feet away from the fronts of the microphones, and this is what you're going to hear with a mildly treated room, nothing too crazy, but there's a lot of stuff in the room, so not a lot of echo, not a lot of reverb. The sound waves kind of bounce in different directions, so they don't necessarily bounce back at the microphones themselves. Alright, 90-degree test, stage left on the AT2040 side. Remember, hypercardioid and cardioid, there could be a difference. There probably is going to be a difference. I noticed that the AT2040 has an excellent rejection of off-axis rejection, so just keep that in mind when you're deciding on a microphone, because that could be a defining factor if you don't mind the tone of the mic. So 90 degrees, a little further away from the AT2020. Now let's move into the sweet spot, 120 to 150-ish degrees right now. And this is where the hypercardioid really shines with its rejection of noise. The AT2020 definitely has more rejection as well, but I think the 2040 has it in this category. Now moving into the sweet spot on the other side, 120 to 150 degrees. This is going to be your off-axis rejection in this department. And you may notice that the sweet spot here is a little louder on the AT2020 because I'm closer to the AT2020. Lastly, 180 degree test, cardioid on the AT2020, hypercardioid on the AT2040, and this is going to be the 180 degree rejection test. Remember, hypercardioid has a little bit of pickup on the back. It's known for having that, but the rejection is better on the AT2040 than I've seen in other microphones. The 2020 certainly is good at rejecting noise in the back with that cardioid polar pattern. Alright, in the booth right now, 2020 and 2040. The AT2020 right here, listening to it right now, has a nice smooth tone. I love the sound of this microphone. I say this a lot, and it's one of those microphones that it feels like home. It feels like a microphone that I could just go back to any time, and I like the sound of it. And of course, when I listen to this in post, I know that I'm going to hear it like I always have. Even years ago when I was doing Let's Play stuff, I really do like the sound of this microphone. Moving over to the 2040, and you notice that it's a very similar sound, but it's missing it. It's missing that low end, as we spoke about in the frequency response. It's just missing things that are significant to certain people's voices. I'm not saying it's everybody's voice, but I'm saying it's mine. And you can try to emphasize the low end when you go a little bit closer, and it sounds a little bit better with people like me and people with similar tones of voice. But when you start backing up a bit and you start getting that more airy sound, it's very mid-forward. So let's get into some plosive tests. 2040 without disappointment with that reinforcement. That always helps. The 2020. I will say that the 2040 does not have a crackle. It just has, I don't know, it's just a little off. And if they didn't have that reinforcement, of course it would be worse, but the PD70 doesn't have that reinforcement, and it's pretty good. To be honest, it might be better. So, I don't know. With the SE Electronics. There you go. There's your plosive test. Now, let's stick with the 2020 right now and listen to the tone. And I really do like this microphone, as I was saying before. It's one of those microphones that it's just the standard. Like, it's classic. It's not anything to write home about in the fact that it's not special in any other way other than the fact that it's simple. It's very smooth, very easy to listen to. You could talk into it for a very long time, and people won't get strained, no ear strain or no listening strain, whatever it's called. I do really like the way that this microphone was constructed years ago. I don't even know. If you know how old the AT2020 is, let me know down in the comments. I'd like to know. And it's very manipulative, I believe the word is. I think I'm saying that right. Meaning that you could EQ it and mess with it in post very easily, and it's not hard to work with. It's very flexible and stuff like that, so it's really nice. On the other hand, you have the AT2040, which I'm interested in doing a video on trying to EQ this microphone. And I want to see how much I could get out of it, how much I can tune it to make it sound to my liking. With this, it's just mid-forward. It really is. And I'm giving it to the AT2020 here because it's just, I don't know. I might have a bias because I've had it for a very long time. I think I've had this, out of the microphones that I still own, no, it's not the oldest one that I have, but it's one of the oldest. I mean, it's 6 years old now, so it's an oldie, but still a goodie. Let's go to the untreated room and test these things in said untreated room. All right, we're in the untreated room. Hypercardioid, cardioid, 2020, 2040. Just to remind you of what video you're in. I know it tends to be a little bit confusing at times, especially when they're both Audio-Technica. So, the lay of the land. 8x8, 10x10 room. I didn't measure it, but it's roughly around that size. This is my old bedroom. So there's drywall on the walls, windows, area rug above a wood floor. There's a flat ceiling, obviously. There's a ceiling fan, which we'll test in the noise test. And pretty much, that's a regular room. There's a lot of stuff in the room, so it shouldn't be too reflective, but it's untreated, quote unquote. But technically speaking, a rug is kind of like treatment. So let's do a noise test, see how these things react. Alright, so some traffic going on behind me at the road. It's not a crazy busy road, but it's got some stuff going on. I think there's a lawnmower or a leaf blower or something like that going on as well. So keep that in mind. Could be relative to you. And what we're going to do now, a little bit of ceiling fan and see how they react. Alright, so let me know down in the comments if you think the hyper or the cardioid was better on that. I have an idea of what it is, but I want to get your guys' impressions on it. Alright, so I'm about a foot away from the fronts of the microphones, and I'm not going to back up any further. This is roughly what it's going to sound like, and you could get an idea of what it's going to sound like if someone was to come in your room and just yell or whatever it is, or just talk to you, or whatever it may be. Or if there's some other noise around you that has a similar tone or similar volume that I'm talking at right now. Just a little example. Alright, 90-degree test over here on stage right. On the AT2040 side, this is going to be the off-X rejection. And that wall, not room, well, this room, has windows, so there could be some reflection there, some reflection off the ceiling. Now, let's go into that sweet spot that I mentioned before. Roughly 120 to 150 degrees right here. And this is going to be your off-X rejection there, about 2 feet away. And this is how it's going to be in a regular bedroom. I mean, I'm running out of things to say. But this is going to be it. Let me know if you notice the difference between the hypercardioid and the cardioid with the sweet spot. Alright, 180-degree test about 2 feet away from the rears of the microphones, and this is what it's going to sound like in your untreated room. Traditionally, the hypercardioid has a little bit of pickup on the back, but I noticed that the 2040 has some good rejection in the rear area here in the 180 department. And that is the comparison between the AT2040 and the classic AT2020. From my tone and everything like that throughout this video, it's pretty obvious of which one I prefer. Now, this doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It really does mean that everybody has their own personal preference, and that goes to a lot of microphones that I've covered and a lot of microphones that are out there. It's not a matter of who's the better microphone or what is a better microphone overall. It's a matter of who's using it and what are you using it for. Because both these microphones have high quality pieces that go into them. And be it with the tone, with the frequency response, or just the build, they have their qualities that are really nice and both shine really well in certain areas. The AT2040, it's better at the rejection of noise. It's better at being handled, and it's a dynamic microphone, so it needs the extra gain, and also the tone is, I don't know, it's a little off-putting. With the AT2020, you don't need as much gain, but it's a more sensitive microphone. So being a condenser, you're going to be restricted in the areas that you may want to use this. And if you're using a condenser, chances are you're going to be doing voiceover work or singing and things like that. If you're using a broadcast microphone like the AT2040, you're probably doing streaming, podcasting, all that kind of stuff. Now, it really comes down to which tone do you like more. Now, that all being said, thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please hit the like button down below. It would be greatly appreciated. Helps this video, helps this channel. Currently, I'm looking at my number right now on my subscriber count, and we're at 993. Hopefully, it's more when this video comes out. And I would really appreciate if you're new here, if you subscribed. It'd be really appreciative. And it's amazing how much this channel has grown, and there's a lot of cool videos I have planned for the future. So once we get to 1K, we'll be able to apply for monetization, all that stuff. And also, there's affiliate links down below. I do get a kickback, so if you buy anything, microphones, audio gear, video gear, whatever it is, it's greatly appreciated as well. 2 more things. Please put on the notification bell and you know when videos come out and when I go live. I'm planning on doing a longer stream. I don't know how ambitious I'm going to be with it, but I'm planning on doing a longer stream when we get to the 1K mark and possibly when we get monetized. Like, I'm planning on doing Monday streams at least until the end of the year. So I think what the plan is, I'm going to do Monday streams. If this next Monday or when this comes out, we don't get to 1K just yet, I'm just going to do a regular stream, nothing too fancy, but the week after, hopefully we get the monetization and all that stuff. Even if it's not, I'll probably just do a longer stream regardless, just to thank everybody and things like that. One last thing, if you have any comments or questions down in the comments section, just leave your comments and questions about the microphones, the tech gear, whatever you want. Just, the only rules are be nice, be constructive, just be nice. That's all I ask. And that's all I got for you. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. The only thing that I want to do is I want to pet that lemur. And no, that's not a euphemism.
It's best